Hey, dude, you and I really haven't talked since the draft. How you doing, man?
I'm good. I'm alive. That's
Yeah.
a definite step in the right direction after the draft. Still feel like I've got some juice left because by Saturday evening, I was driving home in quite the stupor after another tremendous draft all around the NFL and obviously right here in Houston. So yeah, doing well. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. It's another year and it's another draft that just proves we don't know what the hell Nick Casario is going to do. And
Yeah.
to his credit, John McClain wrote an article in the weeks leading up to the draft about Texans going to take an offensive lineman. I don't They took two, but I think it was a surprise to most that they went so early with an offensive lineman, and certainly the offensive lineman and Blake Fisher, right tackle from Notre Dame. And we'll get into him in just a little bit, but that's sort of the overriding thing that I have taken away from this draft is, once again, you never know what Nick Casario is going to do. He traded three times. He waited until the final day to really make any moves, and then he made a few, made those three trades. But he's the master at surprising.
Yeah, there's no question. And I think the pick of a tackle was interesting and unexpected. But when I found out who was, and I made this point, and we've talked about this on In the Lab. A lot of people will ask me, "What do you think you're going to do? What position? Defense tackle, corner, offensive tackle? Are they going to draft a tight end?" And I always sort of bristle at those questions because I don't think it's that simple. Because I feel like, especially like tight end in particular, there's so many different flavors of tight ends. You got your pass catchers, you got your H-backs, you got your inline guys, you got your dual threats, guys that can play inline and motion, guys that are just split out, that are just receivers, just in big tight end bodies. Like it's not enough to say, well, we're just going to draft a tight end. Okay, tell me which tight end it's going to be, and I'll tell you whether that's a fit. Blake Fisher is interesting because I remember watching in 2022, summer of 22. You read about Joe Alt. I remembered Fisher from being a left tackle prior to, but I'm watching him and I'm like, man, I like 54 a lot better than I like that guy. And everybody's talking about that guy. I like 54. He's got something. The run game, he's really good in the run game. And I don't think he's as deficient in the pass game as everybody wants to make him out to be. So if you'd have said they're going to take this guy at tackle, I would have been like, okay, yeah, I could see that. I get that. And maybe it's not for this year. I don't think some people are like, well, he's coming to compete for the swing tackle position. No, no, no. He's coming to compete to be one of the linemen on this team, a starting lineman in 2024. Not coming to compete to be a backup. That's not what he's coming to do. And that doesn't mean that, he's going to immediately supplant Titus Howard, or he's going to supplant Titus Howard, or he's going to supplant Larry Tunsil. It doesn't mean any of that. It just means that he's coming to compete for playing time. And if that means that maybe he's got to change position because they got to get him on the field, well, so be it. Because Blake Fisher, I think, has got something. He's got the physicality they're looking for. He's got the athleticism to get up this second level and move in zone on zone stuff. He's got what they're looking for. And so it didn't surprise me who it was, not what it was. The fact that it was him versus just an offensive tackle. Because there were a lot of offensive tackles that I said, no way. When I heard his name, I went, yeah. Okay. Yes, I like that. So I think in future years, I got to figure out the right way of saying it, and it's funny because Nick and I we kind of joke about his board and what they put their board. They put maybe like 100 or 125 guys, and that's their board. So there are higher ranked players more than likely at tackle they probably didn't have on their board because they weren't thinking these guys can come give us what it is that we want. But they probably had a few tackles on their board, Blake Fisher being one of them, where they felt like this guy comes in and epitomizes everything that we're looking for in an offensive lineman. And with some time, we think he could be a pretty good one. And that's why we're making this pick at number 59. I had him at 62 in the Harris 100, Drew. So, I felt pretty good about where I had him slotted, and that's about where he went.
Okay. So with all that in mind, I know you're a smart guy. You know that you know a lot about the draft, but you also know there's some things you don't know that the scouts and that Casario and all them know.
Oh, absolutely.
And you're always willing to, hey, I'm going to defer. They know what the hell they're doing.
Right.
So with all that in mind, which pick of the 9 got you the most? Because I don't know if you know this. Sometimes you can get excited about picks. You've gotten excited about picks in the past,
Yeah.
and you get amped up about things. Did any of them overwhelmingly amp you up this year as opposed to, the others?
Stover pick was pretty good. Again, going back to the whole tight end thing, Friday night at the draft party, we're kind of right out in the open and everybody's just kind of picking my brain. And, there were people asking me about tight end. And then I had somebody come up and really loyal listener and just was kind of feisty about Jatavion Sanders. And I just was like, I just don't think that's what they're looking for. A guy that's, really kind of a glorified pass receiver. I mean, they have Dalton Schultz and they have Brevin Jordan to do those things. And I don't think Sanders is going to upgrade either one of those spots. But if you tell me, okay, they're going to draft Kate Stover, like, hey, wait a second. That guy played in Rose Bowl at defensive end a couple years ago, which was almost the first thing.
It's remarkable. And he also played linebacker, ping-ponged around. I mean, that's remarkable.
But because of that, Drew, he's got a physicality that a lot of tight ends didn't have and don't have. Now, is he clean as a blocker? No. But he's definitely willing and
he's raw.
Physical.
I mean, he's so raw. He's
right.
Hasn't played this position,
So I feel like that's a spot where if he comes in, he's tough as all get out. He was also a basketball player in high school where he averaged, I think I put in his report, he averaged 15 rebounds a game. And if you think about rebounding in basketball, it's all about body control, anticipation, quickness, and strength. Effort. All of that you got to have to play tight end in whatever form or fashion you're going to play. I don't think he's going to be the move guy. I don't think he's going to end up being the fullback I think he's going to end up being an inline Y that might move a little bit depending on what the personnel is, but he's going to give you a little something at the end of the line scrimmage that you don't have right now currently, depending on Tegan Quatoriano's availability. And I love Tegan. I mean, Tegan was a pick that I called out a couple of years ago when the Texans were on the clock. Like, I think he's on the clock. If they're looking tight end, this guy would be great because he's an inline Y. But Tegan just hasn't been able to stay healthy. And so you've got to stay healthy and have a healthy inline Y that can at least go against Myles Garrett and give him something, that can go against Kwity Paye and give him something and just fight with him a little bit. You're not going to win every block, but just fight with him, be physical with him. And I think you get that from Kate Stover. I also got excited about Jawar Jordan. Really kind of born out of a game early in the season. I watched the opening game of the season. Louisville played Georgia Tech up in the Atlanta Dome, whatever it's called now, Mercedes-Benz Stadium.
Mm-hmm.
And our guy Andre Ware did that game. And Jordan has a 75-yard screen, takes it to the house, has another couple of runs where you just see the shiftiness and you get that kind of Devin Singletary like feel. And I comped Jawar Jordan to Shady McCoy, just kind of the way that he runs and moves and slides and jump cuts. I don't think he's as dynamic as Shady. Obviously, that's why he went in the 6th round, but he's not a tiny guy. I mean, he's 195 pounds. He's thick. He's 5'9", but you can impact the pass, the run, and the return game with one guy. And I think that's, the whole more you can do. He's the epitome. But those are the two that were like, okay, yes, I like it. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, there's 9 Texans drafted. Of the 9, over under 2.5 will start more than 6 games this year.
I'm going to say over, and it's kind of a cheating over because I feel like with tight ends, there's that opportunity to be on the field in 12, even 13 personnel to start a game. You may not play a lot, but hey, 12 personnel. Kate Stover started the game. So I could see him starting in that kind of role, 5 to 6. I could see eventually Kamari starting a decent amount of the year. And then I feel like there's got to be one other, right? I mean, there's 9. You got to feel like you got to get 15 to 18 starts out of a rookie, I would imagine. And I feel like that's going to come from 3 guys. Now, Stover and Lassiter feel like the 2 that are the most, that I would say are kind of the most ready to do it, I guess. And just depending on packages, with a corner, it can be he's at nickel. So he's on the field starting. So you kind of cheat in a way. But that's a good number, Drew, because I think it's 2-3, but I'm going to go with 3 and be optimistic. But this is a really veteran-laden team, even if the veterans are 2-year guys like Will and Tank and CJ, Jared Patterson, et cetera. It's a veteran-laden team. There were 75 veterans on the roster before they went into the draft. So those guys are going to be leading the way. So even if that number is 2 or even 1, I'm not going to panic. But I do want to see this rookie class, as simple as it is, rookie class stay healthy so that you can stack days. And the great, not even the good rookies that we've seen, they've been able to do that. They've been able to practice, play, review the film, learn from it, practice, play, review the film, learn from it, go back and do it again. We've seen great rookies around here become great because they're doing it every single week. Whereas we've seen rookies with a lot of potential that end up getting banged up or get, hurt beyond being banged up, and they're out 3-4 weeks at a time. And all of a sudden they play 2 games, hurt again. Play 4 games, they're still kind of banged up, sit another couple games. There's this disruption. And so rookies, and that's tough. It's tough because they're obviously playing at a much higher level, but rookies that are going to impact this team are going to be ones that are at practice every single day, learning every single day, not hurt, stacking good days, and eventually realize, hey, I can play at this level. I'm ready for my opportunity. And then they get better and better. The more that they're on the field, the more they're available.
Good stuff. All right. I'm going to end with this. It's kind of sign of the times, one of those type of deals. But the final 4 picks of the Texans in this draft this year combined went to 8 different colleges. All 4 of them went to 2 different schools. You had Bird starting out at Wyoming and then moving on to USC. You had Ladarius Henderson, Arizona State to Michigan. He's the only native Texan from Waxahachie. And he played for John Kitna, was his high school football coach. It's a great story about how he got into football, how he got discovered. He's really still kind of new to the game. Not as new to the position at tight end like Cade Stover, but new to the game of football. And it's a really, really cool story in The Athletic. It's from about 4 or 5 years ago, but that's a good read. But lots of guys who went one place and finished at another. Jawar Jordan, Syracuse, then on to Louisville. You can keep going on and on and on. But just, it's an interesting juxtaposition. You don't see that, or you didn't see that like you do now, right?
Absolutely. I mean, NIL and transfer portal have changed everything. And I've talked to a number of coaches, some I know locally, head coaches I know locally that talk about that. And they talk about how they have a player, a really good player. There's a good chance that they're going to lose them to a Power 5 school because there is NIL money. There is an opportunity to be seen at a higher level, playing against higher level competition. And so you have, schools in Texas that, I don't want to say become feeder schools for bigger schools, but when they get great players, teams are always looking in the portal, and kids go in the portal just to kind of check things out, just to see what kind of offers they can get. If they're not in the portal, nobody can talk to them. But if they get in the portal, then they get all kinds of offers. And, I know of a defensive back who I covered for 3-4 years at Sam Houston. He ended up going to UTSA, had a good year at UTSA, and then all of a sudden Oregon offered him a massive NIL deal. And now he's more than likely going to start at Oregon. And because he's at Oregon, he's going to be playing against, Big Ten competition. It's going to raise his profile. And I think that's really what it's going to do going forward, is you're going to have players that are a little bit older because they're staying because, hey, I could be a 4th round pick, or I can be a 5th round pick, 5th round pick this year, or I can go make NIL money, improve my stock, and become a 1st or 2nd round pick the next year.
Yeah.
That's a no-brainer. And so you had a lot less underclassmen declaring. You had a lot more transfers being drafted. And I think that is just going to continue and continue and continue, especially since this past, I think it was maybe a month ago, where the NCAA passed a rule where it's unlimited transfers. You can play at 4 different schools, 4 different years. You're seeing guys that, I just saw one the other day. Guy hasn't even graduated high school yet, but he went early to LSU. By the end of spring practice, he already went back in the portal. I mean, his 2024 classmates haven't even graduated from high school. and he's already going on his second school. And so that's becoming more and more prevalent.
Sort of stands to reason if this trend continues going the way it goes, the drafts are going to be deeper, right? Like with higher quality players because they're more experienced in theory, right?
Well, I think you're going to end up getting a higher quality player in day 3 in particular. And
Right.
I think when you look at, you brought it up, when you talk about what the Texans did, Jamal Hill was at Oregon for, I think it was for 5 years. And by his 5th year, they played him at linebacker. Jawar Jordan had been at a couple schools and stayed for a while. Marcus Harris was at Kansas, went to Auburn, looking for a higher level opportunities, all SEC. That opens the eyes. Even though he's 6'2", 285, I can promise you if he's 6'2", 285 at Kansas, more than likely he's probably not going to get an opportunity to be drafted. But if he does what he does at Kansas over at Auburn, now all of a sudden he opens eyes to Jim Nagy in the Senior Bowl. You get an opportunity at the Senior Bowl, even though at the Senior Bowl there were some good moments, some bad. I mean, I don't think he was tremendous, but I thought he was good. But he had that opportunity. And he also did his work against SEC teams. And so I think what you're going to have is a lot more talent trying to fight into those bigger conferences, Big Ten, SEC, so that they end up having that opportunity to show everybody what they can do. And then the draft, I don't want to say just focuses on those 2 conferences, but that's where the meat of it is going to end up going, because you just have kids very rarely staying in the same spot. I mean, Colorado is the biggest culprit of it right now. I mean, they're basically free agents in football. So it's an odd place to be, especially for those that try and show differences between college football and the NFL. But really, college football has become like the NFL in a lot of different ways. I just feel like the NFL has got it down to a science. They got a collective bargaining agreement. They got these rules. Everybody follows these rules. College football doesn't have that. It's wild, wild west right now.
Wild west. Yeah. I was just about to say wild, wild west. Yeah. Crazy.
Just weird. So I mean, it's funny because we talked about that on Friday night, and then really that just what we talked about. And then on Saturday, it came to fruition. Solomon Byrd is 24 years old, married with children. Those other players Marcus Harris had been at 2 schools. Darius Henderson, you mentioned, been at a couple schools. You just get that opportunity to kind of shop your wares at a different place. So I think it's going to be more and more and more. Like if you went and looked at the players from FCS schools that got drafted, it's a very small number comparatively to other years.
Wild. Well, it's always fun talking about football and the draft with you, John, and you listening or watching us out there. We appreciate your time. Buddy, let's talk next week. Players get closer and closer and closer to OTAs. Rookies will soon be in the building after that. A few of them were in the building on Saturday. It was kind of cool. I'm at my computer and I look up and, there's Kamari Lassiter just roaming down the hall. Oh, an hour later so, here's Blake Fisher. Here's Kalen Bullock. Just checking their new digs out. It was fun to see, and we're excited to have all these new players in the building. Plus the undrafted free agents, because it seems like every single year, 1 or 2 or 3 of them wind up latching on and making the team. So exciting times here around there at the Texans, bud. Exciting times.
Man, absolutely. Appreciate you having me, buddy.
All right, good to talk with you. We'll see you again next time on In the Lab.